What up guys, it is Justice here and welcome back to Runescape. This video is going to be covering off the brand new tier 85 Dragon Rider Lance that is dropped by Vindictor and Gorvek, a God Wars Dungeon 2 monster. And this is a topic that I've really wanted to cover over the past week or two, and yeah, I'm really glad that I'm getting around to covering it off now for you guys. Essentially, I'm going to be looking at it against the Noxious Scythe and just have a look at the major difference between that. Overall, of course, the Scythe is going to be better, but I want to see how much better the Scythe is compared to the Lance by looking and testing out the Lance at Araxxor in high-level PvM situations, because at the end of the day, this weapon and other tier 85 weapons dropped by God Wars Dungeon 2 have been introduced into the game as like an entry-level bossing weapon for those who can't yet afford tier 90, or maybe aren't willing to spend that money on tier 90 as it currently stands. So let's firstly have a look at the price difference. You just can't ignore that. The Lance right now is a shockingly low price of 17 million GP. I say shockingly low. It's just shockingly low because after I've tested it out, I've realized that it actually has a lot of potential and it's a really decent weapon, especially for the price. But of course it's that price because God Wars Dungeon 1 is being completely farmed dry right now by the mass majority of the community, and you know, it's a new area, it's a new environment that's just came into the game. God Wars Dungeon is being farmed incredibly at a huge rate by a lot of people, and you know, Vindictor and Gorvek isn't that difficult at all. So it's understandable why the price is so low. There's lots of them coming into the game. But let's have a look at Araxxor. So the reason why I'm looking at Araxxor is because, like I said, these are like entry-level bossing weapons for mid to high-level players. So they have tier 90 accuracy, but only tier 80 damage, and therefore averages out to a tier 85 weapon. So you're going to be hitting the same rate as a Noxious Scythe, but just with lower damage, and more specifically, you're going to be hitting 12% lower damage. So overall, you're going to be dealing 12% less DPS because you're dealing the same accuracy as a Noxious Scythe. So it's very substantial, the difference in terms of the damage, and you will see a difference even within one kill if you're experienced, but more so over time when you're trying to farm money, for trying to farm that loot from Araxxor, let's say, with a 1 out of 40 drop rate on a spider leg piece. Now, weapons should always be your priority in most situations ahead of the gear that you're using as well. But I also want to have a look at Twin Furies. Again, you want to use the Lance over, let's say, Drygors. Now, yes, the Lance is like half the price as well of Drygors. Drygors, I'm guessing, are still going for around 18 mil each or so. Not sure how they've been affected by God Wars Dungeon 2, but when I last looked, they were around 18 to 20 mil each. For like the main hand and then the offhand. The Lance is just one weapon, and I mean, even if you have a look at the tier 85 Twin Fury weapons, which I'll cover later in the video, they are dirt cheap right now. So yes, I would also choose the Lance though ahead of Drygors. Yeah, Drygors are tier 90, they deal more damage overall, 12% more damage. However, the AoE damage is very important, and that's what really makes the Lance a really good attribute to the game right now. And that's what makes the Noxious Scythe incredible in the game right now, with various different situations, and why the Scythe is, you know, a very high price right now. Don't know whether I actually named the price of the Scythe. When you have a look at the price difference, you just can't ignore that Lance is 17 mil and the Scythe is like 230 mil. I mean, the difference is absolutely huge. Yes, it's still worth getting a Scythe. It definitely is. It's just that the price difference is huge. So we're looking at like mid-level players here who might not be able to afford that. 230 mil is a substantial amount of money. So I'll briefly compare the Lance to other melee tier 85s because maybe you're interested in that as well. There's a few other tier 85 weapons that have came out with this update and previous updates with let's say high-level Slayer mobs with Ripper Demon Claws. So the Lance really does have its own set of perks ahead of other weapons in its tier, such as the new dual tier 85 melee weapons, the Blade of Avarice and the Blade of Namora, dropped by Avarice, a Twin Fury. Now these are going for very cheap from what I can gather, and may be good for low levels when you want to use a shield or a tier 80 defender, etc. But the Dragon Rider Lance comes in much more useful in many situations for mid-level players, and comes out on top, I feel, with Slayer, mid to high level content where AoE damage is superior, such as Twin Furies, and even Araxxor in terms of higher level boss situations overall, due to when path 1 is open and there are multiple spider minions to slaughter. But don't be mistaken, against a single target, dual wield can still deal more DPS due to the destroy ability. I will quickly touch on the Lance versus Ripper Demon Claws now, and just go into a little bit more detail with it. Against low to mid level monsters where accuracy isn't needed, Ripper Demon Claws will be a better option than the God Wars Dungeon 2 melee weapons, because you'll have more damage overall, and even more so when your target's health goes below half. But I can understand the difficulty people will be within when struggling to raise enough cash and levels to obtain these, and even tier 90 Drygors or the Scythe. So what do you buy and what do you use? Well, the God Wars Dungeon 2 bosses have given those players now an opportunity to do higher level bosses with the tier 85 Lance or even the tier 85 Hellware Wand at a much cheaper cost than tier 90 and even other tier 85 weapons such as the Ripper Claws, and get used to the mechanics and raise wealth from killing monsters at a slower rate than higher tier PVMers. But let's say once those players have established the wealth from Araxxor due to the entry level bossing perk of these weapons, they can then go on to buying either Drygors, or I'd recommend go for that full spider leg and make your very own noxious weapon. And just to touch on AoE damage again, I would honestly use the Lance ahead of Ripper Claws at Araxxor, not just because it's cheaper, but because the combination of not being within melee distance and only having to thus prey range, along with AoE damage overall for Path 1. Now, of course, it would be easier to grind out mid-level bosses such as God Wars Dungeon 2, make GP, buy a tier 90 weapon, and then boss at Araxxor, Rots, or Nex, for example. And yeah, that would be much easier, and then of course, then you'd be able to fight the high-level bosses much more effectively. It would be easier to learn those bosses because you'd be dealing more DPS and getting through the fight quicker. However, it gives those players the option to dab into high-level content, hitting at the same rate as tier 90 weaponry, and it allows them to get into the content earlier due to the accuracy output, and it essentially eases the progression towards high tier PVMing, and it eases them into those fights and how to use DPS rotations more effectively and how to learn those PVM mechanics. And you may be wondering, is it worth upgrading to tier 90? And my answer to you is yes, in every single way. Enjoy the game. Don't make the mistake I did for ages, about a year and a half ago, and sit on a load of cash and not venture out and buy the items you need to progress further and get better at the game. Trust me, it's worth spending your 200 mil plus, let's say, once you get that money, on tier 90 weaponry and decent gear, and then making all of that GP back at a much faster rate, and in the process enjoy the game even more. Don't be scared about, purchasing a tier 90 weapon. Don't be frightened about that money going down, because you're going to make that money back. Trust me, you will make that money back, and you'll enjoy the game a lot more, and you'll open up so many more avenues on learning how to DPS better, preventing specials due to dealing more DPS, and you'll be able to go into boss fights with smaller teams, and that will make the loot even more worthwhile for you. But yeah, after completing my first test kill with the Dragon Rider Lance, I actually managed to get myself a spider leg top, which was a complete shock to me, just to get that out of the blue, and I wasn't even going for it. And it tends to happen that way with PVM occasionally. Got a Vengeful Kite Shield at Rots yesterday on stream, and that'll be in a future video as well. But and that was completely random because that's very rare, 1 in 90. But it was definitely a shock to get the spider leg top. Making 1 bill cash stack series as well will be up soon, explaining what happened to that series and going through the progress I've made to rebuild After Invention and, well, Hellware. Also, plans for the future of some potential goals will be in that video, and just goals which will make me enjoy the game even more, allow me to play it even more, in terms of stream more, and just combine that with the release of NXD, which is going to be released tomorrow, which I cannot wait for because that's seriously going to evolve the game. So thank you so much, guys, for watching and listening to this video. Make sure to give it a like, and I'll see you guys hopefully live when I stream it on NXD tomorrow. I cannot wait to do that. That will be after work, and I will be streaming a lot next week, hopefully. I just want to enjoy RuneScape at a different level with NXD. I think it's just going to be absolutely incredible, to be honest. So thank you very much, and I will see you guys in the next one.